God, I hate OBS. Why aren't you working? Oh, hi there. Welcome to episode 3. Hey guys, and welcome back to a very spooky episode of Pokénalysis. Since it's Halloween, look, this took a lot longer to make than I thought. I thought we would delve into one of the big spooky boys. Thick Ghost Boy is one of my personal favorites, Dusclops. This episode will be a little bit different from the last because this scary man isn't a base stage Pokemon. So in this video, I'll also include Duskull in some parts, in the playthrough and the Nuzlocke category, until a point in the game where I think you should have evolved Duskull into the big bad ghost man himself at level 37. First up, let's look at the stat. Duskull has a base total of 295 stats, and Dusclops is sitting at 455 days. This may look low, that's just because Dusclops actually has another evolutionary stage, but we won't talk about him because honestly I just don't feel like it, and because I wanted to talk about Dusclops when looking at VGC, even though that's way later. Both Duskull and Dusclops' best stats are their defenses, with Duskull sitting at a base of 90 for both physical and special defense, and Dusclops sitting at 130 for both of them. Their attack stats are lacking, but can be worked out with because of their move sets. Moves like Nightshade, which do fixed base damage off of their level, and the odd Wild, Will-O-Wisp, and Hex combo will help out the boys with their bad offensive attacks. They both have two abilities, one regular and one hidden. With some Pokemon, the base evolutionary stage will have a different ability to the first stage. Duskull is one of those Pokemon. Duskull can have Levitate as a regular ability, which means it can't be hit by ground type moves, or it could have the hidden ability Frisk, which reveals the foe's items. When it evolves, it'll grow little stumpy legs and lose those little levitate abilities and get pressure, which is when Dusclops is hit by a move, the PP, power points, is lowered by 2 rather than by 1. In a regular playthrough, not many NPCs will have their Pokemon hold items, so you will always want to have levitate and eventually pressure. Now, like I mentioned, Duskull evolves at level 37, which might sound just a little bit high, but these spooky ghost boys have a fast EXP gain and only need 800,000 EXP to get to level 100. So it doesn't take as long as you might think. Realistically, you should be sitting close to or at level 37 by the time you get to the 4th gym, and definitely by the time you hit the 5th. But where do I catch him, I hear you asking? And to that I say, well, in like a bajillion different places, he's actually just everywhere. Unlike Torkoal from the last video, this bad boy can be caught before you even get to the first gym. Duskull can be found at the Watchtower Ruins in any weather, with the lowest chance being 15% while it's snowing, and the highest being 50% while it's raining. On average, you can find him 30% of the time at the Watchtower Ruins, or you can find him at the Giant Seat in Fog for 60% of the time. If, for whatever reason, you don't catch him before then, after the 3rd gym, there are 5 new spots you can find him, those being Motorstoke Riverbank in the Fog, the Giant's Capnon Overworld in the Fog for 20% of the time, Route 6, all-weather random encounters for 18% of the time, Dusty Bowl in the Fog for 30% of the time, Giant's Mirror Area 2 in the Fog for 35%. It is also possible to catch Dusclops himself in the wild in Route 8 in the non-overworld all-weather types encounters for 15% chance after the 5th gym, and it can be found during heavy fog at the Dusty Bowl, Giant Seat, or at the Watchtower during overcast, rain, thunderstorms, and heavy fog. But in the wild area, you will need to beat a specific gym to be able to catch him. So for the purpose of this video, we'll say Duskull was caught before the 1st gym. So with that in mind, remembering Duskull can be found in a number of different places for quite a reasonably high encounter rate, he also has a catch rate of 190, so he's fairly common and he's easy to catch, which makes him just the perfect beginning Pokemon. But how does he do in the gyms? First gym he does quite well, not because he has a type advantage against the grass types, but rather because at level 16 he gets Nightshade, which is a guaranteed 16 damage at least. Milo has no super effective moves against Duskull either. In the 2nd gym, it's probably not a great idea to bring him just because 2 of the 3 Pokemon have Bite and are super effective against him. The 3rd gym is okay for Duskull because you should be around level 25 and Nightshade will do some decent damage now. Just don't use him against Arcanine because it has Bite. The 4th gym in Pokemon Shield, you should leave him in the back because Ghost Pokemon are super effective against themselves, and Duskull and Dusclops are slow, so he won't be moving first with a decent attacking. And in Shield, fighting gym leader is tough too because most of the team have dark type coverage. You probably would have evolved Duskull before the 4th gym, but if you've been negligent, then at the very least you should have Dusclops for the 5th gym battle. And he should have Will-O-Wisp, which burns the enemy and halves physical damage. This is good. This is very good, especially for the 5th gym against Togekiss and Mawile. But be warned that Mawile has Crunch, which is super effective. In the 6th gym, you should have learned Hex, now at level 42, when using Hex on a Pokemon who has status effects like Burn, Nudge Nudge, it does double damage. Most of the Pokemon in both the Ice and Rock gyms are physical attackers, so this combo will be useful again. But whatever you do, do not use him in the 7th gym. Dark types will him up, but he's okay in the 8th gym because all of them are physical attackers. This takes us back to everyone's favorite character in Sword and Shield, Hop. You'll have Duskull for all Hop battles except for the very first 2. Duskull is good in the first 2 battles you'll have him in because of Nightshade doing fixed damage. For the battle in Stone's side, you'll be close to having Dusclops, or may have him already. He'll be good again for Nightshade, but Silicobra will have Brutal Swing. If you've evolved Duskull, you don't need to worry too much about it, but if you haven't, maybe keep him back when Hop sends out the snake. Before you head to your next battle in Hammerlock, you'll want to find the item Eviolite in Balonial. Balonally, which will boost Dusclops' defense and special defense. For the battle, if Hop chose Sobble or Grookey, it's almost easier to not send in Dusclops at all, because he'll have 3 members who are faster and have Dark-type moves. In Chichester, if Hop chose Sobble or Grookey, there'll be 2 Pokemon that pose a threat to Dusclops. But if you do have the Eviolite, then you'll be able to power through lots of his team. Not because of super effective moves, but with Nightshade, Will-O-Wisp, and Hex, you'll do a lot of neutral damage. For your final battle in Winden, Hop actually drops one of the Dark-type moves on his team, so if he doesn't have Rillaboom or Inteleon, there are actually no threats to Dusclops. He'll be around level 50 at this point and will know Shadow. I just wanted to quickly reiterate about the Eviolite because it will become more important later in the video as it goes on. This item boosts the defense and special defense of Pokemon who haven't hit their final evolutionary stage yet, like Dusclops, so this is a very useful item for him. Just remember that. With all that being said, we gotta rate these 2 spooky boys on how good they are in the playthrough. Duskull is easy to find and catch, as well as quick to level up because he's part of the group that is the 2nd quickest to hit level 100. He can be found before the 1st gym and has a move that does set damage, which is huge. He's very bulky, and even before he evolves, gets access to Will-O-Wisp. Then, when he hits level 37, he becomes very, very thick, and can deal some decent damage with Will-O-Wisp, Hex, and Nightshade. He's also pretty useful against most of the gyms, and against the majority of Hop's team, except for the ones with some dark coverage. However, he isn't super offensive despite the damage combo, and just before he evolves he falls off a bit as most of the Pokemon have evolved once, and some even twice, before he becomes Dusclops. So, for regular playthrough, I'll be giving Duskull and Dusclops a 7 out of 10. In this video, in the Nuzlocke section, will be a little bit shorter than in the Torkoal video, because unlike Torkoal, Duskull line is quite unique in what they're meant to do for the team. Most of the information that would have been useful here was, again, covered in the regular playthrough, but I will go through the most important parts of it. Firstly, Duskulls are very common in a number of locations, which is great for the Nuzlocke rules. If you miss him in one spot, you have a chance to pick him up again in a different location that's like just across the other side of the lake. It's crazy how close and how many there are of them. And if for whatever reason you miss Duskull entirely, unlike a playthrough, it's alright to wait it out and just catch a Dusclops directly a bit later in the game. Like I mentioned, Duskull's catch rate is very high, so if you do find one, it'll be an easy catch. Dusclops, however, isn't so much. He has a catch rate of only 90, which isn't great. So not only is he hard to find, he's a lot harder to catch, which just makes Duskull the better one for the Nuzlocke. Similarly to a playthrough, they're both bad to good in the gyms as long as you don't throw them into the 2nd, 4th, or 7th gym. The 2nd gym, Duskull won't be tanky enough to eat too many bite attacks. In the 4th gym, he's just too slow and won't do enough damage with his priority attack against the ghost types. And you're just insane if you think using Dusclops against Piers the Dark-type gym leader is a good idea. But unlike the last video, Duskull and Dusclops are quite unique, and where I was able to provide other better Pokemon for the Nuzlocke to replace Torkoal last time, these 2 spoopy boys are a bit different. Ghost types aren't super famous for being thick damage sponges with the exception of Duskull and his older brethren. They're usually thought of to be fast, hit hard, and don't take hits too well. These boys, however, are slow, don't hit very hard, but can get hit very hard. While there are a few other similar Ghost-type Pokemon in this game, there are none that do it as well or are as common as the Duskull line. Later in the game, you can even catch the final form Dusknoir as an overworld encounter, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. I spoke before about how their defensive stat is so good. Well, that Eviolite I mentioned briefly will come into play in a Nuzlocke as well. If you're in need of a tanky Pokemon that can whittle down an enemy, you're in the right place. The only downside is that he's so slow he'll never go first unless you carry Shadow Sneak around, which is a priority move, but even then that move isn't very strong. So when looking at a Nuzlocke, his defensive stats are fantastic, but he is very, very, very slow. He is super common as Duskull and appears in multiple locations and has a high catch rate, which is great for the challenge. He's pretty okay to good with the gyms and can deal with Hop's team really well on the most part, and there aren't any other ghost types easily available that do what he does or even does it better at all. For a Nuzlocke, I'll be giving him an 8.2 out of 10. I mentioned Dusclops and the VGC at the start of the video, because in this part we're ditching Duskull altogether, and this category is why I didn't even bother with Duskinor in the first place. Duskull and VGC is just straight doo-doo. Forget about it. But Duskull is one of the greatest support Pokemon ever. Like I said before, Dusclops' base stats on his defense are quite good, but then if we do some EV and IV training, we're looking at one thick... God damn. The spread that I would and have used is 252 EVs in HP, 92 in defense, and 164 in special defense, and then 31 IVs in everything but attack, and a relaxed nature which is plus defense and minus speed. This leaves this big man with 147 HP, 75 attack, 178 defense, 80 special attack, 171 special defense, and 40 speed at level 50. As you now know from the playthrough in the Nuzlocke category, he isn't super offensive, which is reflected in his attack stat, and he's super slow. But there is a reason why this is good in a VGC context, and that is because of the utility and his moveset. Dusclops is what we would call a support / setup mon. Usually they are tanky and protect or power up a more offensive Pokemon. Dusclops can learn a move called Trick Room. This sets up an effect that makes speed order flip, so the slowest will move first, second slowest move second, so on and so on. For this reason, Dusclops is usually paired with slow sweepers, and makes them and himself incredibly fast. There are a number of different moves that can be run on Dusclops, and it all depends on someone's playstyle and the Pokemon they want to partner up with Dusclops. For example, if you wanted to use Tyranitar with Weakness Policy, which is an item that boosts attack and special attack when it's hit by a super effective move, you use Trick Room and then Bulldoze, which hits everyone including your own teammate, and because it's super effective, it'll activate Weakness Policy, and because his attack is so doo-doo, he won't hurt T-Tar too much. A more traditional set is Trick Room, Pain Split, which shares the HP of the user and target equally, so it can be used to either damage an enemy or heal a hurt ally. Nightshade or Ally Switch, which swaps the slots of Dusclops and the other Pokemon on the field, so that if your opponent hits into that slot, Dusclops will take the hit instead. Also, people can use Haze, which just removes all stat changes made. Remember that Eviolite I spoke about a few times now? And that nice defense stat that he has after IVs and EVs and Natures? And how he's used to take hits and set up for your sweepers? Is that making sense? Well, there's me. Dusclops' hidden ability Frisk is bad in a regular and Nuzlocke run, but in regards to VGC, it is quite impressive. Knowing which items your opponent has on their Pokemon can be the difference between a win and a loss, so when Dusclops is sent out, you get to find out what both opponents are holding. So, when you put it all together and pair it with a Pokemon like Conkeldurr, a very slow but very hard-hitting Pokemon, you can detect on Conkeldurr while you set up Trick Room on Dusclops, making it seem faster than the other two Pokemon on the field, use Conkeldurr to sweep and use Dusclops to either do 50 damage with Nightshade, swap spots with Conk, so that when they try to hit Conk, they hit Dusclops instead, or you can Pain Split that damage onto the enemy and finish it off with your sweeper. Dusclops isn't always easy to use because you have to try and read what your opponent is going to do, but that also makes your opponent unsure of what to do, because if they mess up, then they could lose the game just purely because of Dusclops. Dusclops is super tanky, he's an enabler, he can heal and deal some decent damage with Nightshade and Pain Split, which makes him a very scary Pokemon to go up against. And unless the enemy has Taunt or Imprison, which will mean Dusclops can't get up Trick Room or use Ally Switch, and honestly at the end of the day, if they're a good Dusclops user, it doesn't matter so much anyway, he can be the core reason you lose to someone in a battle. For this reason, I'm giving Dusclops a 9 out of 10. After averaging these scores together, it comes to 8.7 out of 10. This man and his little brother are monsters, and will haunt your dreams if you lose to them in battle. Trust me. I know this all too well. But that'll do it for this episode, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope that you all have a happy Halloween. Again, I'm always happy to get some feedback on these episodes, so if you'd like to just drop it in the comments, I'd greatly appreciate that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks, and see you next time. Take it easy.